topics on my mind generate a series or kind of interconnection among different musings. And so this being the first of those will probably show some holes that I hope will make more sense or come together with the next couple. But the core topic right now is monster toughness. And it is related first to a very fundamental decision about playing the game. And I think it is very clear, especially in the DM guide, that however those pieces of text came together from different times, potentially from different authors and sources, it results in genuine schizophrenia of many types or many faces. But in this case, one face is dedicated to what you might think of as effectively, if fantastic, reasonable and appreciable landscape. A place that has its own integrity, a place that has its own history, a place that has purposes for the entities inhabiting it, and that these things are accessible through play. So that's one face, and that's, in that sense, you would look across a landscape or look across a map or look across a conceptual framework, and you would say, well, this kind of creature would be there, and that kind of creature would be there, and this kind of creature might be there because of some history of this kind, and who knows where the inspiration comes from. Maybe you just see a broken structure on a map and you go, oh, well, here's the creature in it, and that's what broke it, or something like that. Or you might find a creature and say, ooh, I want to play that creature, and then you look about and come up with a reason for why it would be here. So think of that as monster placement. And a great deal of the monster manual and the DM guide support that and provide a lot of advice for it, and really have very little to do. Randomization in that case would be very much edge case, going somewhere else that isn't as thoroughly thought out, or perhaps in circumstances where the potential encounters are effectively unconstructed entirely or unknown. But typically it's much more about where things have been placed. That's a topic that can be developed through treasure and experience and a few other things too. But in that sense, the monsters are following that logic as to where they are and what they are. Now then, we have the utterly randomized thing, which I don't think is supported much in the text of those books at all. It is extremely explicit in appendices A and B. So therefore, that's kind of a whole different game. I mean, you finish the book and you go, oh, so that's how to play. And then there's Appendix A, and you're like, oh, wait, there's a different, this is how to play. We, start rolling and creating rooms and finding out what's in them. That's tied certainly to the Geomorph publications, which someone reminded me about a few weeks ago. And it really is a different thing entirely. And in that sense, you have some sort of a printed mechanism by which you are following instructions and finding out what's in these places, and that will tell you. So those are two really, really different ways to do things, and the support for them is physically separate across the text of the DM guide. I mean, tremendously separate. And you just kind of have to choose. There's probably others and intermediates and all sorts of things people could bring up, but those two are really, really distinctive in the text, and ne'er the two shall meet. In either case, though, a particular problem, if you will, takes on its own distinctive shape, as I say, for each one. So in the case of the landscapey approach, by that logic, any creature in the monster manual, and in my case the Fiend Folio, these are the two books that I am in fact using, you could say anything. You could flip open a page. I mean, randomly, point at a page and say, okay, that's there. And you look across your landscape and you go, oh, well, it could fit in right there. And we're not talking about the level of the creature at all. You're just going with that fantasy logic. And as a matter of fact, there's something kind of joyous about this idea that you're happily populating this place conceptually with things you like, that make sense, and that you feel have integrity with everything else known. So that's one thing you could do. And in the case of the randomized effect, arguably, depending on the algorithms involved, you would end up with who knows what, who knows where. But in that case, there's more of an acknowledgement of this fundamental problem or topic that I haven't quite articulated yet. But by looking at the geomorphic or the random effect, you will find that it will ask what level we are on, and then the table you roll upon is tuned to that level, the idea being that easy at the top and harder as you go down to Asmodeus or whoever. And so the idea being that the delvers would penetrate to a certain degree and then go back and lick their wounds and hire some more people and replace their losses and so forth and level up and all that, and then would return to go deeper this time. And in fact, the text in the 1974 publication, as I was reminded by another person, is extremely explicit about this. And we can look at Holmes, which is all about this, to the tune of third level characters, but it was very explicit that this is what we do. And we can look over to the cultural sister and perhaps even more powerful version of this in Tunnels and Trolls, which is also similarly very much about this process. So the important point is not to confound that with the random determination of the dungeon and the adventures themselves. That's the principle in question. As the characters go up in level, do they encounter more and more and more powerful foes, which by definition means that while they are at lower levels, they won't. Or at least if they, see such a foe, that there is a very, very broad scope of avoidance available to them. So that's really the topic. And I'm just saying that the geomorphic or, dice your way through building the dungeon approach tends to acknowledge that. Whereas the landscapey approach, the shall we say, the fictional, situational approach is sort of confronted with it as, well, if that's the case, then why do they keep running into foes who are nicely tuned for their own level? It's kind of like the 7th level foes are on, in the green room sipping coffee, waiting until the characters are, as such a level as to be worthy of their confrontation, and then they, put down their coffee cups and head out into the fiction to go and confront them now. So in either case, you're really dealing with a lot of arbitrary aspects. After all, the matching, the relative matching to character level is set by the algorithms of the make it up, the dice it up approach. And then it's set by elements of coincidence and, these are the guys you happen to meet sort of approach in the fictional landscapey way. Now, I'm not going to crank about this. I accept a constraint as well as anybody else. And yet, I would like to have some kind of integrity. I'm taking a very soft touch toward the landscapey approach right now. I'm sort of conceiving of the landscape and building it and thinking about it and refining it according to first principles as we continue to play. And soon there will be, a nice feedback of what is known onto play. So I am taking more of the sort of landscapish approach, but I know that the game relies the leveling up process, and also the monster toughness, which is what I really haven't managed to get to in this discussion yet. The monster toughness itself.